Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the Navigating Track. My name is Jan Schoenberger. I'm from LA County, USC, and it is my pleasure to introduce Dara Amin. As a program director, being able to introduce one of your former chief residents at your program who now is at Cook County doing academics is one of those things that is absolutely a pleasure. So, Dara, thank you for agreeing to speak, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share.
Thank you. I really appreciate, I know it's the last day, everyone's tired from the lectures, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Just because it's a smaller group, I'd love to hear where everyone is and what position they're at, because I think this can apply to chairs and PDs and APDs and then the rising residents that might be taking on positions. So if we can quickly do this. Great, APD. I'm just going to identify the roles so I can understand. Thanks. APD, fellow, faculty development. Great. 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 APD, 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 fellow. Yes, sir. Okay. APD. Fellow. Awesome. Great. Thank you. So, this idea came to me because, well, I was in that position where, I'm in my fourth year at LA County, USC. I'm applying to jobs. I've decided that when I thought about academics versus community, that I'm really hedging towards academics. So I started interviewing, I make a great CV, I meet with chairs, I basically tell them my interests and what I've done so far. December, January of my senior year there, I get an opportunity. Cook County offers me a position, they said you can come on, and I'm like excited. So it takes like a month to 2 months to get over the excitement that I have a job next year, I'm not going to be unemployed, and I'm going back home where I'm from, Chicago. So when I was thinking about that, I was like, great, what am I going to do there? You know, I get there, all of residency from the first day I started till almost the fourth year I was done, everything was kind of mapped out for me. This were my electives, these were my rotations, this is when I had to go, this is when I had to come home. And even the electives where I had to choose my own interests were tough sometimes. I would probably pick the easy ones just because I wanted to rest, and it was almost never out of interest. It was more, I would pick an easy one and try to get research done or things that I was interested in. So I'm going to go through some of the key factors that are really important as you take on these positions and plan it out. I had some really good advice from really good mentors. The first one I want to say is the people. So I got there day one, but actually I got there probably a month. I traveled out there and walked around the hospital, introduced myself to nurses. And so when I say the people, I don't mean the chair or my PD or the APDs there. I mean the people that work in the hospital. I went around, I introduced myself to the nurses. I introduced myself to the EKG technicians. As a young female coming on at a very historic place, they're not used to a lot of change. And when new people come in, you need to kind of prove yourself. I felt that if I just started the shift and we had a tough case and I was bossing someone around, they're going to look at me and say, who are you? And it wasn't a great opportunity at that moment to introduce myself. I rather do it on a positive. So I learned their names. I actually made a sheet and I put photos that I could find online. I learned the residents' names. I understood where they were coming from. It gave me a little more comfort in this position that I was taking on. We're a large residency. We have 17 residents each class. So that's a lot of people's names to learn. And I'm the new person, so it's on me to learn their names. So at the end of the year, which I realized someone had told me, I will sit down with the chair and we do an end of the year evaluation and with some of the other leadership. One of the key things, I thought I would just go in and I'd do my clinical shifts. I try to work well with others, but that's actually a big part of your evaluation. It's not just how you work with the other faculty. It's the nursing administrators. It's the nurses. It's the techs. They had comments that were written about how I did, how they liked me, how they didn't like me, things like that. So what I did, that work I did in the initial part, was actually really important, because one of my biggest advocates were the nurses. They were saying, you know, she's great. She introduces herself. She knows our name. She asks about how we're doing. So I would really, really encourage you guys that wherever you take the position, get to know the department outside of the department leadership. Go to the ED, learn the technicians' names, learn the EKG technicians' names, because it was a key component of how my evaluation from the chair was and how they thought I did for the whole year. This does include resident evaluations, and that's a whole other thing that you have to work on of balancing. But I thought this was kind of low-hanging fruit, that I could actually introduce myself to the employees of the department. Moving on to the rest of the faculty. So here I am coming on, recently graduated residency. Like I said, Cook County is very historic. So there's people that have been there longer than probably I've been alive. And they've developed some really close relationships from just being there. And one of the best advice I got was, be careful who you share some of your dislikes and likes with. And so I would say, be a good workhorse. Go in there, and yes, you want to be liked, but you don't want to be over-liked or over-disliked. So quickly I realized that if there's gossip going on, if people don't like each other, don't get involved. Have a couple, I would say 1 to 2 max, faculty members or mentors that you have that you trust, that you're going to go sit down privately and speak with if you have an issue. But in the areas, it's very common that faculty, I'd be working and there would be a faculty member joking about another faculty member, speaking something funny. That is not the time to engage and hop into that conversation and join in, because you don't know their relationship with that faculty member. I've seen residents do it, and I would also caution, do not engage with the residents to talk bad about the faculty member. It's a professionalism thing, and I think it's really easy when you're trying to fit in, you're the new person, to get involved with that, but I would really advise against it. I think it could be the worst decision for the rest of you're the new person. You have to prove yourself. So moving on. So the work. I found this the most challenging. I knew I had my clinical shifts. They gave me a schedule. They told me these are the shifts you're going to work. And then there's, in academics, as we know, there's a percentage of the clinical shifts, and the other percent is what are you doing on the side. And you kind of have to show that at the end of the year of what you've done. Well, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Usually your first year, one thing that was required is that you have to take your oral exam, or your board exams and your oral exams. So I had that scheduled. So I was like, okay, I'll study for that. That'll take up some time, but that's required of me. I had sat down with my chair, and he said, you know, I really want you to kind of explore what you want to do, help people out that need help. It was a very vague thing. I didn't know exactly what that meant, because I felt like everyone probably needs help. I don't know who to help. I would say be open. This is the biggest helpful advice that I got, that I had a lot of interests, but I didn't have a niche. I didn't have anything that I was an expert in. So when people come to you asking if you can help them out, be cautious, because you don't want to, you know, spread yourself too thin, but really engage yourself in helping individuals that need the help, because at this point, you really don't have a lot of leverage to say no. There's not much on your plate at this point. So get involved. I got involved with curriculum. I didn't know much about it, but I said, okay, I'm going to get involved with curriculum and make a small aspect of flipped classroom. That was one of my big things, and I ran with it. You have the entire year to decide if that's something you want to do or not do, but when you sit down at the end of the year with your chair and your leadership, you need to show what you did for the year. They know you do the shifts, but you need to actually have some productive things you've done. And I would decide that early on. I wouldn't wait halfway through the year. So for example, if I started in July, I took my written board exam in November. Starting in December is too late. I'm sitting down again with my chair in June, July. 6 months have gone by, and I can only say I studied for my board exam. That's not good enough, because you want to stay on as faculty. You want to do your homework beforehand. The additional thing is you have to be present. And what I mean by that is, come days you're not working clinical shifts, attend meetings, attend departmental meetings, attend meetings in the hospital, attend meetings of wellness that the residents are having. Be there for the residents, because right now you're just an observer. You're trying to take in, what is the feel of this department? What do they need? Don't be vocal about your opinions as much, but be there. And I think that was my biggest thing. I went to almost every journal club that first year. Don't know if it was required, but I went because I felt like that was the only way I could figure out who the residents are, build relationships, and kind of hear where the needs of the department were. Sometimes what you may be interested in is not a need for the department. So that's great. For example, you're very interested in wellness, and that's something that you're like, I'm going to do this for this department. Well, when you get there, that might be something that's already filled. Someone's already doing that, and they're probably maybe the expert on it. The residents love them. So all of a sudden, instead of feeling like, well, that was my thing and it's not, I can't do it, find something else for the year. These are some of the things I would say. I made a roadmap and I had a timeline, and I'd say July I started. I met with the chair. I'd done my homework. I said, in addition to my clinical shifts and some of these projects I'm going to take on, these are some of the things I'm interested in attending. They will require me to be absent from Chicago for the time being. I mapped it out. I told him the cost of the things, how long I would be gone. I showed him effort in me reaching out and registering for these things, and I wanted their buy-in to say, yes, you can go. And I gave a reason. I had a pretty written out reason of why I felt like this was helpful for my faculty development. Obviously, this is a lot. I didn't do all of it. I don't think it's possible to do all of it and work clinically, but these are some of the big things. So I did do the ACEP teaching fellowship. That's a big commitment I've actually, some people who I did it with are here. It's a week in August and a week in March that I'd be gone. That means I would need no shifts during that time. I asked for compensation back for my time there. The Teaching Institute, that's something I couldn't do. I would like to do that in the future, but unfortunately with the time stuff, I had to decide one or the other. CORD, I'm here, so obviously that was okay. AEM, I did not get to go to. ACGME, the reason I bring that up was there's a big push right now with wellness and ACGME. So I started trying to get more interested at our hospital of ACGME meetings. So I found out when they were, tried to find out when do they meet, what's going on at that level. And then SAM, which I won't be going to as well. But it's good to know about these and not just wait while you show up to your first year and then ask other people, what should I go to? What's great? What's fun? Find out what's helpful to you. And it could be productive because you will have to say how this was helpful to you at the end. All right. Moving on, the patients. I think this is the most important part because academic physicians, it's a lot of me. You know, I'm here. What can I do? How can I help? How can I grow? But at the end of the day, the department, your co-faculty, and yourself, your mission is, I wanted to help the patients. I came to this institution, yes, to develop myself professionally, but also become a better physician. So knowing that, I was also left with the challenge of, I just graduated. I'd be overseeing senior residents, telling them how to take care of patients that maybe they already kind of felt comfortable taking care of patients. What would I add additionally to that? So I did my homework on that. I had key little talks that I felt comfortable giving in the departments as a teaching role while I saw patients. Secondly, at the end of all of this, my patient care came first. That first year, I really concentrated on making sure that I understood how the department flowed. I try to make my numbers the highest for being productive and efficient. I started taking on patients primarily. If the resident was flooded, instead of sitting back and saying, well, I'm the attending now, I don't need to see patients. No, I still need to see patients. I need to help them out because it matters. I'm still learning. If there was interesting patients that they had in other areas, I went and saw them because I was still learning. I asked other faculty members that had patients, can I see this patient with you? Can you tell me more about them? I got advice from them. I would say the attending job that first year, I would call it's almost like a PGY5 level. You know, you're still learning. You still need to do all the things to keep that growing. This is one thing I did that I think helped me, which is follow up with patients. So patients where I was unsure, I didn't have an attending like I did in residency to say, is this the right decision making? Am I making sense? Is it okay for me to discharge this patient? I got their contact and I would call them and I would email them and say, are you doing okay? Because I had a lot of fear that I was discharging people that I did not feel comfortable because I'd maybe never seen that pathology. And now I was on my own. I didn't have any checks and balances. This really reassured me that, okay, my patient care is going well. Patients are staying alive. They're not passing. And I would encourage you to do that. Obviously, not every patient had a telephone at Cook County. That's not always possible. But anyone who did have contacts, it was nice to know that they were doing okay. Also, it allowed me to see when they would come back, bounce backs, right? I would follow up my bounce backs pretty aggressively because I wanted to know where was the mistake in my thought process. Now that I was on my own, it was much more important for me to do that. Secondly is trust. This was a very, very hard thing for me with the residents. Trusting residents when I'm still gaining my own comfort level with these high acuity patients. So I would say that I would let the resident present to me. I would hear the plan. And a lot of my senior faculty members felt comfortable because they knew the resident. They wouldn't have to sometimes go see them or take another history. I sometimes secretly, because I didn't want them to think I didn't trust them, but I didn't trust them because I didn't know them. I saw every patient. I took my own history. I did my own exam. I wrote almost pretty long statements under their note when I signed it. I would see other faculty members leave earlier than I did because they just had to sign that, they supervised and they were out of there. I would stay longer because I would actually have something to write. I would add exam findings. I would touch every patient. And I would encourage you to do that your first year, even if it means more work. The residents that some people are like, oh, that's a great resident. You don't have to worry about them. I wouldn't take that because for me, I don't know them. I need to learn about them. This was a great analogy that one of the faculty members told me is that med students and junior residents and even some senior residents are kids with sharp knives, right? They're running around with a knife open. And in a busy ED, it's very easy for them to present someone to you and you say, yeah, that sounds great. And they leave. And you don't know if that knife was used or if they just kept it in their pocket. Did they show it to them? What happened exactly? And until they understand how to use a knife properly and keep it safe and not have the pointy edge out, you really have to oversee them. And so I did this. I did it. And it's really challenging, especially with med students in the mix. There's so many things. And it was hard, but I think at the end, I gained more trust in myself and with my supervision. So the last thing is the future. So I did this year. I did the fellowships. I had a pretty good realm on the people in the ED. And additionally, I felt like I knew my patients really well. I knew the patient population. I trained in LA County. So the patient population at Cook County, although both county populations, it's different. We have different populations. We have a high Polish population. I didn't take care of Polish speaking patients in LA at all, actually. And here we have Polish translators in the ED because it's the second highest Polish speaking patient population to Warsaw. Who knew? So I had to learn a ton. I mean, I had no clue. They're, I guess, the equivalent of the Armenian population in LA, that they're stoic and they have heart attacks when you don't know they're having heart attacks. So a lot of that I had to learn. So my question is, what about the future? So I think this is is that you keep people that are good mentors around. So even as for the people that are leaving residency and entering the workforce as APDs or academics, and then also advice from the APDs and PDs to your incoming faculty is tell them to hold on to the mentors that they may have at other institutions. They will make relationships in the department that you're at, but those relationships are new. They're going to form. They're going to take time. And it's really, really important for me that I kept in touch with all the people. I think that's how my path to where I am now even happened. That's my advice to every resident I talk to, that if you have someone that you knew in med school, if you know someone you knew in residency that you were close to, that you trust, keep in touch. It's the era of technology. There's no reason you cannot send them an email, talk to them, see how things are going. And a lot of the conference that I was able to attend, like ASAP and CORD, I was able to see these people again and keep contacts. The network is huge, but yet the community is really small, and that's really important. These are all the individuals, and they come from all these different institutions, and that's key. They're from Emory, they're from Cook County, they're from LA County USC, and so this web is going to keep growing and it's going to get larger. And I'm proud of it because I hope to be on a slide like this for someone else that's a resident in the future. But in the meantime, I'm still learning and these people are helping me. And I usually every year, every other year, maybe even every 6 months, I'm sending emails, asking them questions, asking them advice. They're people I trust. You have to be vulnerable with some people and not with everyone. So everyone in your department may not like you. They don't know you. You can't trust them. But have a tight knit of people that you do trust. And then my biggest advice is stay in touch with them. I don't have much more. It's my last slide. Does anyone have questions about anything navigating? I had more that I didn't want to get into detail of cost. How do you discuss these things with your chair? My advice is be forthward and ask. If you don't ask, they can't give it to you. There's a lot of things I think our chair has been surprised that I asked for, but then they give it to me because no one asked me this. So yeah, sure. And it all depends on their budget and their time and how they have to be fair about it. Someone else may have to receive the same treatment. But if you don't ask and if you're saying, oh, well, I'm just so happy I got this job that I don't want to mess it up. Well, that's not true. I would say ask and you actually will get a lot more. And I think it's been a very productive year purely from asking. And I continue to do that until someone tells me you're asking too much, stop it. But I don't see that happening. And thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question just so it's recorded. The question is from a leadership in a hospital about what could have been provided more in structure or advice and what could have been done more as a first year faculty. I remember sitting down and we did have some structure. For scholarly activity, there was a timeline. It said by the end of the year, you need to produce a publication, an abstract, a chapter, but this is what has to be done. I think having something on paper to say that, and then there was a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. I had to revisit that with my chair because I found that surprising that he actually had that. And he said, in this year, this is what I expect you to do. In 5 years, this is what I expect you to do. This is what I expect you to do in 10 years. And I think having some sort of guidelines. Additionally, letting the person coming on know what the need is in the department. It was very clear to me at halfway through the year, and people I work with know this, something was presented to me as a need in the department. And they were very upfront that this is a need. We need this kind of role filled. Being honest about that and not, saying that we kind of need it, you should get involved, but saying we need this role and we think you should do it. It gave me the transparency allowed me to think about it and self-reflect of what is the need in the department and say yes or no to it. I think sometimes faculty are hired on without any real idea of what the need is. What is my role here? I think sitting down and saying, we do this really well as a department. We don't do this really well. How can you help us? Because I think the new faculty that are coming on really want to help the department. They just feel like they only remember the interest they had in their residency. So structure, timeline. And then lastly, I would say providing in very clear terms what you're able to provide them for cost and time off. We are county employees, so it's very clear my vacation time and my sick leave and whatnot. But a lot of these new faculty coming on don't know that and they don't ask. So just being clear on that so that they're not planning this, trip to Thailand during the time where you're like, no, I actually needed you to do the CCC committees during that time, but maybe that wasn't clear to them that they were supposed to be involved in that throughout the year. And I know that can be hard, but I think if it's there and it's written, they really will follow those structures because you have to remember they're almost like a 5th year resident. They still need a little more structure. And we've talked about this a lot at this conference of the millennials and the Generation Y. But I think putting all those things down, cost, timeline, and where the need is in for the department. So that was a long answer for your question. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. And I'm happy to share what I've done and the good and the bad about it, but I didn't want to get into detail. I tried to stay more broad. I appreciate everyone staying around. We're ending a little early. Thank you.